Hello and welcome to Season 6, Episode 1 of the Sajin Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Teale. All right, folks, we are back. New season, new stories, same me. Just a little more tired and probably slightly more caffeinated than the last time. I want to kick things off this season with something raw, something real. I just got back from a whirlwind photography assignment in Seoul, and I figured what better way to launch Season 6 than by pulling back the curtain on what that actually looked like. The stress, the hustle, the brief flashes of magic, and the brutal clarity that comes from shooting on just fumes, caffeine, and instinct. Now, it all started with, the way these things go, with a random phone call. Some of you may know what I mean. Like, it just comes out of the blue, like an email or a message from someone you worked with years ago. And 1 minute you're at work or just planning a chill weekend, and then the next you're on the KTX headed for Seoul to shoot the city for someone that you really haven't worked with before. Now, the tourism board, they needed an article. They needed it fast, and somehow my name came up. I'm grateful, of course, but when you're freelancing in Korea, this isn't always glamorous. This is, not champagne or anything like that. It's basically you've got a backpack crammed full of camera gear and maybe a few hours of sleep, and you're headed up to Seoul for a full day of shooting. The big thing here is that it's never really as glamorous as just, gala events or something. I'm not that kind of a photographer. So looking down the barrel of a full day of shooting, I am a little bit stressed, but it all comes with the territory and the paycheck at the end of the day. So basically, I got up at 4 a.m., I hit the KTX, and then I rolled into Seoul fairly early. Oddly enough, I stumbled out of City Hall Station and right into a Tim Hortons. I'm Canadian, so that was my fuel for the morning. I stopped there and then got my fuel, and my first target then was Insadong. And I realized I was catching the last day of the festival. So if you're a photographer living in Korea and you've never shot the Lantern Festival, put that on your list right now. It's one of the biggest events in Seoul of the year, and it's probably just a treasure trove of great photo opportunities. I unfortunately couldn't shoot the main event, which was the light parade, but of course I caught the last day, which I was happy with nonetheless. Now, this is something that I'm going to say again, like if you're in Korea at this time next year, put the Lantern Festival on your shoot list because it will be something to remember. Now, for me, what I was looking for was the lanterns and Jeonggisa Temple, and this was something that I really was sort of looking forward to shooting because it was the first image that sort of stuck with me when I first came to Korea. So I finally nailed the shot. The image I found was from like a beat up old Lonely Planet guide that I had when I first came to Korea about 20 years ago. I'm not really sure why that image stuck out to me so much, but I could recall it from memory for many, many years. It was basically that tree that stands in front of the main hall, and it sort of gets surrounded by the lanterns that they put up every year. And it was something that when I got into photography, I'd always look at as like that's the shot I need to get. And I'm not sure why. It really wasn't that impressive of a shot, but I remember this trip, like coming around the corner off the main street where they were preparing for the parade, and I saw it. And I said, like, that right there, that's what I needed to get. So I started snapping away. And it wasn't really the most impactful or amazing shot. It's not going to get, nominated for awards, but it was something that I just sort of checked off the box as I finally got that after 20 years. Shout out to Dave Harvey, because we talked about that shot and we probably looked at that shot together. But you know what? Everything comes full circle. So that's what I'm happy with. Now, after that, there was Gyeongbokgung Palace. I know it's touristy, but sometimes those cliche shots really deliver when someone needs a photo like that. And if I'm there when stuff is going on, why not? I call them my safety shots because they're the ones that you don't really have to put much thought into them. You just go there, get the shots. And when someone says like, hey, we got a piece on, Seoul and we need a shot for Gyeongbokgung Palace. Do you have anything? And it's in there, So whenever I'm up in the city, I try and get some of those like cliche shots at varying times of the day just to have them in my back pocket, because sometimes that's an easy paycheck. Now, as I'm walking through, I stopped dead at Gyeongwon Pavilion, the one that's surrounded by the water. It was the same spot that I photographed my dad many years ago. He was leaning up against a tree in front of that pavilion. And it just always like the memory hit me hard because I just felt like I was there walking around with them, but it was a little bit warmer this time. You don't expect a freelance job to punch you in the chest like that, but there it was. And it really sort of shook me, but I walked around. I got the shots that I needed, especially when I was walking out. They had the main changing of the guards ceremony. That's if you're looking for the main event, that usually happens around 2 p.m. So sort of time your approach just perfectly, and you can get some good shots. Just be careful. There are going to be a lot of people, and everyone's clamoring to get shots. So just kind of keep that in mind. This job really wasn't about capturing moments. It was about getting a job done and moving past sort of the basic necessity to sort of pitter patter around Seoul. I had a job to do, and I had a serious deadline. Really, like, I had to get the shots, get them, get back home, write the article, and have it sent off within a few days. So this was tight. I had to get to Yoido, and this is the business district, if you're not really too sure what that is. Except, here's the kicker. It's the weekend, which means it was absolutely empty. Empty buildings, empty streets, closed restaurants. To kick myself in the balls a little bit harder, the sky looked like dirty dishwater. It was just nasty. And it was the kind of conditions that make you second guess every decision. Should I have come up a week early? Should I have done something better? But, I had to do with what all the conditions that I was given and make them work somehow. But again, years of teaching business English, I really fell back on kind of where would my students go after hours? What places would they talk about when they were talking about their heishik and stuff? Because that was sort of the angle of the article. And so then I stumbled around Yoido for a while, and boom, I had a lead. I found some spots where I thought, okay, yeah, this would be where the workers would go. They would start their dinner off at a Korean place with some soju and stuff like that. And I sucked up my pride. I went in by myself and got my dinner and started taking pictures. And that's where you start getting the visuals and you start better understanding the story. So I got the shots of the restaurant, and then I headed down to the riverside. That was another big moment in the brief, was to catch the people getting ramyun and quote unquote shaking off a hangover along the Hangang River. And I got those shots. But again, as luck would have it, or no luck, the timing really didn't match up, because I can't really be there until 2 a.m. like a salaryman would be, stumbling drunk and eating his ramen. So I had to make the best effort. And as luck would have it, I had shots from there from a night shoot I did with the Seoul City Tourism Office years ago when they took us around the city with National Geographic photographer David Gutenfelder. So I fell back on those, and it really was sort of a saving grace. So after those Hangang shots, I was really sort of exhausted. My feet hurt, my joints ached, and I had to get back onto the KTX and head back to Ulsan. And it was one of those anxiety-ridden trips back home. I really wanted to sleep, but I'm kind of going through my shots like, did I get enough? Did I nail the assignment? Did I completely blow it? And really, it was just ridiculously hard not to fall into a cycle of negativity here. So I got home at about, 11. I collapsed. And then, as I said in the last episode, I got a new job teaching out in Gyeongju. So my alarm hit hard at basically 5 a.m. and I had to get up, crack on a little bit about the editing, and then back to work. So it was basically a full day of work, coffee, teaching, and this is the part of like freelancing and teaching at the same time. So that night I tried to edit, but I looked at Lightroom like it was written in Martian. It was just a total mental crash. I couldn't do anything. So Tuesday, I was up at 5 a.m. again, frantically typing, frantically editing, building a cohesive story from the chaos. And it all came together. At least I think it did. It was probably not one of my best pieces, but I hit send by Wednesday morning, mission complete. And then it was just back to the grind. Nothing ever happened because that's the rhythm of this life, right? Like you just can't, stop and praise yourself because, immediately I got another message back saying, we want you back up in Seoul in a couple of weeks to do a different assignment. So, it's kind of like you just got to keep rolling with it. Now, why am I telling you all this? Well, because I want this season of the Sajin Photography Podcast to be more than just me crying into the microphone or something like that. I want it to be less about gear. I hate those like podcasts where they're just going off about the coolest gear that you're never going to buy or anything like that, or just the mundane photo tips. I am going to work into that, but I think what we all need is sort of the stories and, the real life behind the lens kind of stuff here. The beauty, the burnout, the small wins that keep us going, because after all, we're not pros. Like, some people may call me a hobbyist or something like that as a put down. I take it as a compliment. If you're an expat photographer in Korea or anywhere else, I want to talk about these little wins that we get when it's not a major, life-changing event, but you are going to get an email where it's like, hey, can you come up here and do this shoot for a small amount of money? That's what I want to talk about because it's real. I'm not bullshitting you about how awesome the life is. I think we all live the same life here in Korea, where we're teaching on one side, or we've got a regular job, or if you're a student or something. And then on the weekends, we're grinding it out. We're trying to make the schedules work, and we're trying to edit and do stuff that we all can in between those times. And that's kind of what I want to gear this new season towards, is just being a real functioning podcast that I think every one of us can connect with. So please, guys, stick with me on this one. I've got more stories lined up, perhaps some gear reviews if you want that, but more or less behind the scenes deep dives into the photos that I get, the locations that I am going on, and maybe a few rants here and there. But again, thank you for tuning in, and make sure to subscribe, leave a review, a nice one if you're being honest. And I have noticed there's a couple 1-star reviews on the Korean side, but we won't get into that right now. But just understand, this podcast is basically for you, or if you know anyone else who's out there grinding with a camera in hand, living in Korea and has a story to tell, send this to them and maybe they'll like it. But until next time, keep shooting, keep drinking that coffee, and keep showing up to get the work done. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you next time.